music.
You muddled up with Brad Pitt
you're doing
again.
the rules of...
And I'm going to give you a little insight here, a little insight into what the stash from hell looks like. No doubt people have, some of you out there will have bigger stashes than this, but you know, this is me keeping it down to keep her happy, you know, because she don't love the stash from hell. I love the stash from hell. It's not her favourite thing at all. It's one of her worst things. It's my favourite thing, but it's one of her worst things. I got that from the King of Barini. I got 2 of them from the King of Barini, and kept this one for the stash. So I was talking in episode 1 of this 2-episode series about how if you want to knit something with 100 colours in, you need 100 colours. But I just want to clarify things, because I didn't always have 100 colours. I didn't always have the stash from hell, and I do understand that there will be people that are watching these videos that are new to colour work knitting. So what I did was I went and found something that I knitted. Now I think I knitted this late 80s, early 90s. It was certainly knitted for one of our children who are in their 30s. So this is an early bit of fair isle knitting, or early for me. Now at this point I would have had, maybe my stash would have been a carrier bag, not a shed. So I would probably at tops have had a carrier bag, and a lot of these colours were Rowan offcuts from my mum's big projects that she was knitting, so that they were scraps of yarn. So I was making this with scraps of yarn, and there are 2 interesting things about that. One, I haven't got a huge amount of colours, but there are a fair few colours in there. But also my early attempts at fair isle, there were a lot of plain rows in this knitting. So if you look at, say, that row where the red dot in the middle, either side of that you've got 2 rows of plain knitting, then you've got 2 rows of fair isle knitting, and then another 2 rows of plain, another row of plain, another row of plain. And I think I looked at it and I think I calculated that I was actually knitting fair isle probably every 4th or 5th row. So what I would say is it's an easy way for people who are starting, because the changing colours makes it look like there's a lot more going on than there really is. There are lots and lots of plain rows, and that's so that I could have a rest from the stress of fair isle knitting, because when I'm starting I wanted to see progression. I wanted it to grow quickly, so I could knit a lot faster with one colour in the row. So I'd knit some nice fast rows, and then I'd be quite slow on the fair isle, but it meant it could grow quite quickly, so I can knit it quite quickly. So I was still enjoying the knitting and seeing results quickly, rather than if I was doing fair isle every single row, it would have taken me forever because I was just learning.
So you've said all along, before you started this, that you knew how you wanted it to look.
I got a vision in my head. I mean, obviously I'm looking at a painting by an artist, but I was also thinking about it, because it's not going to be exactly the same as the painting. You know, it's a piece of knitting. It's not going to look like exactly the same as the painting. But I did have a clear intention of what I wanted to do with the colour. Because a lot of what I do, I see as experimental, and so I'm trying to try things out. You know, I don't know whether it'll work. I never know whether it will work, but you know, sometimes things fall by the wayside, sometimes they don't. With this, I knew very much what I wanted to do. I wrote it down here so it makes more sense to people. So I've got the background and the foreground. Now the background is obviously it's the blues going into the darks up here, and the foreground is obviously the flowers and the petals. Right, so I started off and it was all pastel-y, but if you look at that, there's a dark start, and there's a reason for that. And I started with that dark because I do this quite a lot. I introduce colours into the rib to begin with that I'm going to use further on. So it's got a dark, kind of like a dark border to it, although I've gone into the pastels quite well straight away after that. But the intention was there that I know that at the other end I'm going to get to very dark. So I'm not really there yet, but these are darker areas that I'm getting into with the background. So this is how it works. So the background, sky at sea, it starts off, so this is the bottom where I started. So it starts off with pale colours, blues and greens and greys, and then goes up to dark colours, so dark greys, charcoal greys, nearly blacks, probably not blacks, nearly blacks, dark purples and dark greens. And greens and purples work really well together. On the flowers and petals that I wanted to do was to start, and if you look, there's a lot of grey at the beginning of this. There's a lot of different greys. The background has got like greeny greys and bluey greys and grey greys, and the pinks are light pinks, but they're dusky. They've got a certain amount, a touch of black in them, touch of black in the colour. And then as I've gone up, so the idea was I'd start with the pastel-y and the dusky pinks, and then I'd go into brights, into real bright pinks and bright magentas and bright reds, and then I'm going to go back into the dusky pinks again at the top, but they will now be against the dark greys rather than the light greys. So I'm going to go back into light pinks, but they'll be against the dark greys when I get there.
The other thing people ask is where you get your colour inspiration from.
Well, obviously, when I was young, I studied colour, and I do still buy books about colour. This is one that I've been reading relatively recently.
Can't see you got your hand over there.
But I wouldn't say go out and buy a book on colour.
What's in that then that would inspire you?
Well, in this, I mean, that's great. That's Pete Mondrian, and it shows you the tonal differences. For instance, I'm just opening a page at random, so that's the colours, but you can see the tonal differences. So you know it's been changed into a black and white photo, but there's this isn't what I would say is inspirational.
Okay.
I wouldn't suggest that anybody looked at books on colour theory. What I would suggest that people do, I do a couple of things. Now, I've talked about this before. What I do, and it goes back to me saying, if you haven't got 100 colours, you can't knit something with 100 colours in. But I put these together. So I will quite often put a basket of different colours together. So in this basket, I've got greens and blues, and there's also that sort of mauvey brown colour, but you know, you could see how they would all work well together. And then in this I've got pinks and reds and purples and going into oranges as well, so they've all got red in them, you know. So purples purple's a mix of red and blue, and orange is a mix of red and yellow, and obviously pink is a mix of red and white. So they're all red based colours, but you could knit, say, with those as your background colours and those as your foreground colours, or vice versa, in the two colour knitting that I like to do. So that's one way of deciding on your colours. Another way would be to pick, and I've just gone around the house a second ago and I just picked up two things. This is the birthday card that you bought for me, and it's orange and pale blue. It's a British Museum card that you bought for me, and I think you could knit, I mean, it'd be lovely to knit something in those colours, but also you could knit that whole thing if you wanted. It's scary, but you could. And this is one of your witchy books that off the bookshelf, and I often look at this and I just think it's like a 1970s book, but I just look at that, the colours I just find absolutely beautiful. It's as if they've put a filter over it. These days in Photoshop, or maybe even on Instagram or something, people put filters over things, but it's as if they've put a filter over it, but I'm not sure they have, because the whites are still very white there. So it's weird, that, but very lovely. If you could just quickly do the green lady, although she looks blue, that's it, and then you can do it at an angle. So what I would say is that what's fascinating, because obviously I look at this every day because it's on our wall. This is an original one that the King of Barini, it's Trechikov. I don't know whether it's called the blue lady or the green lady, but our one, she's definitely got
it says on the back.
Does it?
I think so.
She's definitely got a more blue face than green, I'd say.
She's very beautiful.
What's great about it is she's got this like burnt umber background, and then she's got primary colours. She's got three primary colours, so she's blue, yellow and red, and then just black, and that's lovely. You could knit that.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, you could knit that, or you could knit those colours. That's what I mean. You could say, I want to pick those colours and I want to knit something in those colours. Okay, and then there's this bag, which is a bag that you bought, which I've been using as the project bag for this, and it's kind of influenced me a little bit, I'm sure, because I'm carrying it around with me. But you could choose the colours from that and knit something in those colours. So just to finalise that, Joe, what I would say is just look around you in your surroundings, walk around your house. I literally picked those up in a minute, just quickly, and I'm sure there's probably 100 things that I could pick up and say, that's an inspiration, I'd like to knit from those colours. That the problem then comes is, have you got those colours? And that's why I think if you want to knit in this way, you need, book's gone for Burton. You need to build up your stash. Can I quickly do Mug of the Week while I'm here?
Mug of the Week.
Mug of the Week.
It's been around for a while.
I'm going to tip it up. You can look at what's written on the bottom.
Can you make sure you drink what's in it first?
See what I was inspired by. Did you catch that?
It was upside down.
Well, I painted that. Arthur and his friend were in a painting pottery. It's not a lesson, is it, Joe? What is it?
No, it's a little studio you can go to and paint your pottery.
Yeah, we went and painted pottery with Arthur and his friend, and whilst we were there I decided to paint a mug to match my knitting. So
compare it then.
Oh, well, everyone's seen that.
Yeah, well, you need to hold it together.
Well, they don't look very much like each other.
No, but that's what you're talking about, is one thing inspiring another.
Yes, one thing inspiring another. So, Mug of the Week.
So you said at the beginning of the video that you were going to tell everyone the rules of knitting with colour. So the rules are?
The first rule is you must never talk about the rules of knitting with colour.
Well, that doesn't work. Is that from a film?
No, it's not. No, there's no. I don't think there's any films about knitting with colour.
No, it's the one about the rules
you're
that you
getting-
don't talk about.
You're
We don't
getting me
talk
muddled
about
up with
knitting.
that actor. What's his name? What's his name, Joe?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt.
Oh, is that what I'm getting confused
You're
with?
getting me muddled up with
No,
Brad
you're
Pitt
doing the
again.
rules of Fight Club.
Oh, is it Fight Club?
I think the quote from Fight Club is that you don't own your possessions, they own you.
So, what are the rules
That
of knitting with colour that you think?
what I think, there are absolutely no rules whatsoever. Everyone's got their own idea of colour and what colour looks good together. I would say that there are no rules, but get yourself a nice big stash together with lots of colour in it so that you can experiment with colour. The other thing I would say is when you are experimenting with colour, to not see it as a whip, not see it as a work in progress. It's just a swatch. See it as a swatch, experiment, play with colour. If it turns into something, that's great. And when you start knitting, really, you can usually turn anything that you start knitting into something if you want. So if it's working out really well and you wanted to turn it into, say, a shawl, turn it into a shawl. But just play with colour.
Have fun.
Have fun with Brad Pitt.